AITA for leaving my girlfriend and her ex stranded on a trip I paid for? Before I appeared in Megan's life, she had spent almost 6 years with someone named Derek. It was not just any relationship or one of those fleeting romances that fade over time. They had built something solid, or at least that is how it looked from the outside. They lived together, shared expenses, had clear plans, and had even talked about buying a home together. They did not get formally engaged, but they were at that point where everyone assumes it is only a matter of time. The relationship ended in a strange way. There was no huge betrayal or obvious scandal. Simply put, according to Megan, things just wore out. Constant arguments, differences in priorities, lack of communication, the typical things you hear when something no longer works. But there was something in the way she told it that did not quite fit. She did not speak with pain, nor with anger. It was more like a cold neutrality, as if she had emotionally disconnected long before everything ended. At the time, I did not give it much thought. I figured everyone processes things in their own way. The problem was not really the history with Derek. The problem was everything that came after. From the beginning, I noticed that her family never fully let him go. They did not talk about him constantly, but he was present in a subtle, uncomfortable way, like a shadow that appeared at the least opportune moments. The first time I met her family was at a Sunday lunch. Nothing formal, something simple according to Megan. I went with the typical mix of nerves and expectations. At first, everything was pretty normal. Basic questions, smiles, polite comments. They asked me what I did for a living, how long I had been with Megan, how we had met. I work as a freelance graphic designer. It is not the most stable job, but I do well. I have regular clients, steady projects, and a certain freedom that I value very much. When I mentioned that, there was a brief silence, not entirely uncomfortable, but noticeable. Then her father made a comment that seemed harmless at the time. Ah, interesting. Derek also worked with large companies, but he was at a major corporation. I did not answer. I just nodded. Megan changed the subject almost immediately, as if she already knew where that was going. And right there I understood it was not something new. Over time, those kinds of comments started to repeat themselves. They were never direct attacks, never something I could easily point out as disrespectful, but there was always an implicit comparison. Derek was organized. Derek had a clear vision. Derek always thought long-term. They never said you, but you could feel it. And yet, Megan was always on my side. She did not do it in a confrontational way, but enough to set boundaries. That is why I decided to ignore it. I thought it was a matter of time, that if the relationship moved forward, if they saw it was serious, they would eventually stop looking to the past. But there was something I could not completely ignore. I was not competing against a person. I was competing against an idealized version of someone who was no longer there, and that is much more difficult. Several months passed, and my relationship with Megan became more stable. It was no longer something new. There was trust, routine, shared plans. It was in that context that the idea came up that would change everything. One night, after a dinner with her family that ended up being tenser than usual, Megan said something to me that stuck in my mind. "They do not really know you," she said without reproach, but with a certain frustration. "And what do you want me to do?" I asked her. "I do not know, but if they saw who you really are, everything would be different." That phrase kept running through my head for several days, and that was when I made a decision. I was not going to argue with her family. I was not going to try to convince them with words. That never works. If I wanted to change their perception, I had to do it a different way. So I decided to organize something big, something they could not ignore. I work with international clients and have experience organizing complex projects. It was not the same thing, but I could adapt that skill. My idea was to organize a complete experience for her family, not a simple plan, but something that would truly involve all of them. I rented a large beach house on the Florida coast for 10 days. A comfortable, well-located place with enough room for everyone. I took care of coordinating activities, transportation, catered meals, excursions. I invested time, money, and effort, not because I wanted to impress them, but because I genuinely wanted to create a space where everything could flow differently. When I told Megan about it, her reaction was immediate. She got excited. "Would you really do that?" she asked me. "Yes," I answered. "But not just for them, also for us." She smiled, but said something that I took as a positive at the time. "This is going to change everything." Over the following weeks, I focused completely on that. I tweaked details, confirmed reservations, planned every day. I wanted everything to be perfect. When we finally presented it to her family, the reaction was better than I expected. Surprise, interest, even a certain enthusiasm. But there was also something else, a pause, as if they were evaluating. Her mother appreciated the gesture. Her father asked practical questions. Her siblings seemed genuinely interested. Everything was going well until one of her uncles said almost casually, "Derek always talked about doing something like this." Nobody said anything. Nobody corrected him. Neither did Megan. She just smiled, but it was a different smile. And although I did not fully understand it at the time, something inside me started to feel uncomfortable. Despite that comment, the plan moved forward. During the following weeks, something started to change. It was not a radical shift, but it was clear enough to notice. Megan's family began to include me more in conversations. I was no longer just Megan's boyfriend. Now they were asking me directly about the house, the activities, the schedules, small but important details. I remember one afternoon in particular when we were reviewing the itinerary in their living room. I had everything organized: rest days, boat trips, planned dinners, even free time for everyone to do whatever they wanted. While I was explaining one of the days, her brother interrupted me. "This is pretty well thought out," he said. It was not over the top, but it was the first time they acknowledged something without comparing it to someone else. Megan looked at me right then as if to say, "See." And for the first time I felt that maybe it was actually working. Even her mother started to become closer. She asked me questions about my job, about how I organized projects, about my clients. It was not just politeness. You could see a real interest, but the most unexpected change came from her father. He had been the most distant since the beginning. Never rude, but reserved, always observing more than he spoke. One night, after dinner, he stayed with me on the terrace while the others went inside. "I am going to tell you something," he began. His tone was serious, but not hostile. At first I was not convinced. I did not answer. I just listened. "Megan has made impulsive decisions before," he continued. "And we try to protect her." He paused. "But this thing you are doing is not just anything." I looked at him, trying to understand where he was going. "Not everyone invests like this in a relationship," he added, "and even less so with the family included." I nodded. "I am not doing it for them," I finally replied. "I am doing it for Megan." He watched me for a few seconds and then nodded slightly. That is the important part. It was not total approval, but it was the closest thing to it that I had received up to that point. After that conversation, everything seemed to be heading in the right direction. Megan was calmer, happier. "I told you," she remarked one night. They just needed time. I truly wanted to believe her. But deep down, there was something that did not quite fit. Perceptions can change, but not that fast, and even less so when there is history behind it. Still, the day of the trip arrived. Everything was ready. The house confirmed, the transportation organized, the activities booked, every detail checked multiple times. The night before was quiet. We had a light dinner, reviewed lists, talked about what we were most excited about. Before going to sleep, I said something to Megan almost on autopilot. "Hey, wake me up early tomorrow. You know I am a heavy sleeper." "Yes, do not worry," she replied. "I will handle it." There was no reason to doubt. We went to sleep, and the next thing I remember is silence. I opened my eyes. The room was lit by daylight. That was already a bad sign. I grabbed my phone. It was 10:17 in the morning. We were supposed to leave at 7. I jumped up. No. I looked for Megan in the room. She was not there. I went to the living room. Nothing. The kitchen. Nothing. A strange feeling began to grow in my chest. It was not just nerves. It was something else, something I did not want to name. I called her. She did not answer. I checked my messages. Nothing, not a single one. That was what finally triggered everything. I went back to the bedroom and opened the app where I kept all the reservations. The house was still there, the activities too, but the transportation was not showing up. I thought it was an error. I refreshed it. Nothing. I took a deep breath and called again. This time she answered. "Hello," she said. Her voice was strange, too calm. "Where are you?" I asked directly. "What is going on?" There was a brief pause. "We are already on our way," she replied. I felt like something tightened in my chest. "What do you mean you are on our way? Why didn't you wake me up?" Silence. "Megan," I insisted. "I did not wake you up," she finally said. Just like that. What do you mean you didn't wake me up? I asked you to. I know. That, I know, was what changed everything. Then why not? There was another longer pause, and then she said something I did not expect. Because this was important to them. I frowned. I do not understand. They wanted Derek to go. I felt an immediate emptiness. What? I called him a few days ago, she continued. And he agreed to go. I did not answer. I could not. Are you serious? I finally asked. It is not what you think, she said quickly. Explain it to me then. Silence. I did not know how to tell you. I let out a dry laugh. And your solution was to let me sleep and leave like it was nothing. She did not answer. And that silence was enough. Did you also want him to go? I asked. She did not answer. And that hurt more than any word. Something inside me clicked into place at that moment. The confusion turned into clarity, and the clarity into a decision. I understand, I finally said and hung up. I stood in the middle of the apartment without moving. Everything I had organized, all the effort, all so that in the end they would not even include me. But there was something else. It was not just that they had left me out. It was how they did it. And that, I was not going to let that go. I stood in silence for a few minutes after hanging up. I did not yell. I did not throw anything. I did not make a scene. It was something much colder than that, as if everything had suddenly fallen into place inside my head. There was no more doubt, no more confusion, just a clear idea. I was not going to let this go. I picked up the phone and checked all the travel documents, contracts, reservations, payments, contacts. Everything was in my name. I had organized absolutely every part of that experience, and that meant something important. I had control, not total control, but enough. I first called Brian, the property manager of the beach house we had rented. He answered on the second ring. Everything ready for today? He asked normally. I need to make a change, I replied. There was a brief silence. Tell me. I will not be arriving with the group. Is everything okay? Yes, but I need you to adjust the reservation. I briefly explained the situation to him without going into personal details. I want the reservation to be inactive when they arrive. Cancel it completely, he asked. Yes. He hesitated for a few seconds. I can do that, but they are already on their way. I know. Another pause. I understand, he said finally. It can be arranged. I hung up. Next, I called the private transportation service taking them from the city. I did not cancel the service. I just asked for a modification. Can we add a stop before reaching the destination? I asked. Yes, of course, the operator replied. Any specific location? I gave her an address. A small, remote place, but completely legal as a drop-off point. Perfect. We will notify the driver. Thank you. I hung up. Everything was in motion, but it was still not enough. I kept thinking for a few more seconds, and then made one last decision. I called Brian again. I need you to do one more thing. Tell me, when they arrive and ask about the reservation, explain that there was a problem with the confirmation. Anything else? Yes, that if they want to stay, they will have to pay for everything all over again on the spot. There was a longer silence this time. That is going to cause a conflict. I know. Are you sure? I looked around my empty apartment. Completely sure, I finally answered. I hung up, and then I waited. I did not do anything else. I did not call Megan. I did not text. I just waited. Almost 3 hours passed before the phone rang. It was her. I answered. What did you do? She said without saying hello. Her voice was no longer calm. It was now filled with tension. What do you mean? I replied. Do not play dumb, she said. The house is not available. That cannot be, I replied with a flat tone. Of course it can be, she exploded. They are telling us there is no active reservation. I stayed silent for a second. How strange. Stop playing games, she said. You canceled everything. I did not cancel anything, I replied. I just made some adjustments. You could hear voices in the background, confusion, people talking at the same time. We are in the middle of nowhere, she continued. They dropped us off at an earlier stop, and now this. Well, I said slowly. I guess that is how things turned out. There was a silence. A heavy one. Are you really doing this? She asked more quietly. Doing what? Ruining everything. I took a deep breath. No, Megan, I replied. I did not ruin this. Another pause. You did. She did not answer immediately. We can fix it, she finally said. Just reactivate the reservation. I shook my head, even though she could not see me. No. Silence. What do you want then? That question was the key, because right then I understood something. I did not want money. I did not want apologies. I wanted them to understand. I want you to resolve this the same way you resolved leaving me out. I heard a soft sob. It is not the same. To me it is. The background voices were getting louder. Someone was arguing with another person. Someone else was asking what was going on. You are leaving us stranded, she said. Interesting, I replied. That feeling sounds familiar to me. You are unbelievable, she said with anger. No, I replied. I just learned quickly. There were a few seconds of silence. Then she said something I did not expect. Derek is here. I smiled slightly. I know. He is trying to fix this. Perfect, I replied. That is what you all wanted him for. There was no answer. Let him solve it. I added and hung up. I left the phone on the table. I did not feel euphoria. I did not feel satisfaction. Just a strange calm, as if everything was in its place for the first time. A couple of hours later, I received another message. Not from Megan, from her brother. This got out of control. I did not reply. Then another from her mother. This was not necessary. I did not reply either. And finally one from a number I did not have saved. This is Derek. I think this can be resolved by talking. I read the message, left it there without opening the conversation because there was nothing left to talk about. I did not respond to any of the messages that day. Not to Megan's, not to her family's, not to Derek's. I turned off my phone for a few hours and completely disconnected. I went out for an aimless walk, more to clear my head than anything else. The funny thing was that I did not feel bad, not the way I expected to. There was no guilt, no anxiety, no typical did I go too far. There was something much simpler, clarity. For the first time since I met Megan, everything made sense. It was not the job, it was not the comparison, it was not her family, it was her. Because in the end, no matter how much others influenced things, the decision was hers. She was the one who called Derek. She was the one who decided not to tell me anything. She was the one who chose to leave me out. And that changes everything. That night, I turned my phone back on. I had dozens of messages, some angry, some desperate, others trying to negotiate. But there was one that caught my attention. It was from Megan. We are not at the house. We ended up in an expensive hotel because there were no other options. I read it. Then another message. My dad is furious. This got out of control. And yet another. Derek could not fix anything. That last one made me pause for a second, not because of him, but because of what it represented. Throughout all this time, he had been the benchmark, the point of comparison, the implicit solution. And now he could not solve anything. I put the phone aside. I did not reply. 2 days passed. On the third day, Megan called me again. I answered. Her voice no longer had anger, nor pride, just exhaustion. We need to talk, she said. There is not much to talk about, I replied. Please, she insisted. Just listen to me. I stayed silent for a few seconds. Speak. She took a deep breath. I made a mistake. I did not say anything. I thought I could handle it, she continued. My family, the pressure, everything. And the solution was to lie to me. I did not know how to do it differently. I let out a small, humorless laugh. There is always a different way, I said. You just didn't choose it. There was a silence. I want to fix it, she said. I shook my head. It cannot be fixed. Of course it can, she answered quickly. It was just a mistake. That was where I interrupted her. No, Megan, my tone was firm. It was not a mistake. Silence. It was a decision. She did not answer. And decisions have consequences. I could hear soft crying on the other end. So what then? She asked. Is everything just over like this? I looked out the window for a few seconds before answering. Yes. The word hung there. Simple, definitive. You are not even going to try? She said with a broken voice. No. After everything we had. The truth, I interrupted her, is that we never had the same thing. Silence. I was in a relationship, I continued. You were in a comparison. She did not reply, and that confirmed everything. I am not going to compete with someone who should not even be in your life anymore, I added. And even less so when you are the one bringing him back. I heard a sob. I am sorry, she said. This time she really meant it. I could tell, but it did not matter anymore. Me too. I replied and hung up. There was no goodbye. There was no need. Over the following weeks, everything settled down. I never heard from Megan again. Her family did not contact me again either. Through a mutual acquaintance, I found out a few things. The trip ended up being a disaster. Problems with reservations, constant arguments, tension all the time. Nothing like they had imagined, nothing like I had planned. I also learned that Derek did not stick around for long after they returned. Apparently, reality was not as compatible as the memory. It did not surprise me. Idealized versions almost never survive when they face the real thing. Over time, all of that stopped mattering to me. I went back to my routine, my work, my projects. And even though it seemed like a bitter story at first, it ended up being necessary because I understood something I didn't see clearly before. No matter how much you do for someone, if that person is not truly with you, you are always going to be alone in the most important part. And that is not negotiable. Comment. Hey everyone, this one really hit close to home for me. I've learned that self-respect is something we should never compromise on. Setting firm boundaries is actually an act of self-love. Taking responsibility for our own peace makes all the difference. It's okay to choose yourself even when others don't understand. Real healing often starts when we stop ignoring the warning signs. You deserve relationships where you're truly seen and valued. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away with grace. I hope this reminds you how important it is to protect your heart. Always remember that your well-being comes first, and that's never selfish. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.